Hello and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program and a new SSTO video. So I've been kind of developing a new SSTO, right, a new goal for SSTOs. Well, the goal of my new, let's say, project or something like that, and this SSTO as well, is to try to develop something rather long-range SSTO, something that is at least as capable as the Mark III SSTO, which is actually a rather popular video on this channel, so if you haven't seen it, go and check it out. I'll probably leave a link somewhere, if I'm not going to forget that. So a longer range SSTO. And from the title, and probably as well from the thumbnail, you already know that this is a Mun SSTO, or at least capable of going to the Moon and back. This is more or less the same, let's call it, achievement or capability as my previous SSTO, being the Mark III SSTO that I've mentioned already. However, I do think that this SSTO is in theory capable of going at least, well, pretty comfortably to Duna and back. However, I haven't tried this one out, but there might be a video following up on this. Anyways, without kind of, let's stop with the rather kind of thinking forward and imagining what we could do in the future. Let's focus rather on today's video, which is a kind of longer-ish video, since there is quite a lot of footage I think to cover, or at least without skipping too much, or at least cutting too much of it out, since I do think it is not that bad, or I mean, like the flight performance and so on and so forth. So, speaking of flight performance, as you saw, flying at a steady 15-degree angle in the rather low atmosphere, picking up speed, which is working pretty well with those two Rapier engines. God damn it, I've been watching too many SpaceX update videos in the last couple of days. Anyways, so like I said, flying radish at a around 15-degree angle of attack, until we are at around 20 kilometers, engaging the singular nuclear engine, and then switching to the closed cycle mode at around 30-ish kilometers, or when the thrust from the Rapiers drop below 20 kilonewtons per engine, and then just using up pretty much all of the oxidizer, and then coasting along and circularizing. And that's pretty much it, like every other SSTO. Now, following, or this part right now, you can see us performing the first of 3 actual transfer burns to the Moon, since we only have one nuclear engine, and we could in theory perform everything in one go, but I preferred splitting up the burns, and this way we are first of all more efficient, and secondly we kind of, or I decided at least to launch it rather not quite the perfect moment, or start our acceleration burn, not at the perfect moment for a regular Moon injection burn, and this way we can kind of wait a tiny bit until the Moon moves a little bit further up ahead on its trajectory. Now here we are burning the second injection burn, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'll be cutting forward to the third one any moment now. And there you go, now doing the maneuver note for the third and final encounter burn with the Moon. And now, as you know, have a look at the central, more or less left HUD display. You can see down there still 4,200 meters per second of delta V, and that's already, well, not quite in lunar encounter, but almost. So you can kind of count with that thing having 4,000 meters per second after a lunar encounter, or if you perform it well after going into interplanetary space, and this is more than enough to go to Duna, and that's what I meant earlier with our, in theory, Duna capable SSTO. Now, enough speaking of kind of Duna capable SSTO, even though I'm kind of, as you might have guessed, slightly interested and optimistic in terms of building a new SSTO. But more or less the main But there are actually two reasons why I'm actually doing this video. Let's quickly jump up on this. Oh, and now we will have a really beautiful scene in terms of beautiful approach towards the moon. Looks good, I think. So that's why I left it there at a rather slow pace. But anyways, so there are multiple reasons for doing this video, except the obvious reason of doing a new video. So one of them is I have been a little bit playing around with SSTOs, and that kind of made me do an SSTO video. And the other point is that, like I also said already, or mentioned at least in the beginning, is that the Mun SSTO video, the Mark III SSTO guide to the Mun, is, I think, the most popular Kerbal Space Program video on this channel. So I kind of decided, you know what, since that one is rather successful, let's go and one-up it. Even though this SSTO is definitely not as, let's call it, impressive, since it's very small, only less than 30 tons and takeoff, which is also more or less a goal. The goal was building a small long-range SSTO, more or less around one nuclear engine. There were a few iterations where we had some iron engines actually, but they caused, like the fuel tanks and the solar panels and everything caused a lot of drag, and in the end we weren't able to get off Cuban that easily. Yeah, but anyways, speaking of aerodynamics, if I'm already touching up, no, we're going to touch up on the aerodynamics later. It's a later part. Yes, so that's why more or less I decided to go back to the Mun and not directly to even though that might have been another possibility. But yeah, so that's actually just me trying to get more views for the channel in a nutshell. But anyways, who can blame me, really? Okay, now back towards the footage. I skipped more or less one orbit. So you saw earlier that we have not circular race, but slowed ourselves down into a slightly eccentric orbit around, more or less equatorial orbit, more or less, yeah, around the Mun, and then we immediately jumped down to this more or less part here, and that's just one orbit later. And I decided, since the Mun rover, or so at least was the icon called, came up pretty close to our trajectory, I decided to land there. However, I started our deceleration / landing / like the final burn before you touch down a little bit too early. That's why we overshot in the beginning. But thanks to the massive amount of delta we have, we could just, without any problems, fly back towards the rover, and now we are approaching landing, or approaching the surface, getting very close to the surface at 1.4 kilometers distance to said rover. And now we're coming in for the final for the last bit, slowing ourselves down with our nuclear engines, landing gears already down, and puffing with the Rapier engines. And there was already too much thrust, and we jumped up again, and I decided, you know what, let's cut the Rapiers completely and just focus, or at least slow down completely with the nuclear engine. And then we did a not too gentle touchdown, a little bit jumping on the surface, but not too big of a deal. The craft is sturdy enough to handle that, and especially on the rather weak Mun gravity. And now it's just a thing of rolling forward, puffing a few times with the big nuclear engine there, which provides enough thrust to bring ourselves nice and close and pog to this rover. And that's actually, I was slightly surprised to see this rover, since I thought there would be a bigger rover here, but it is a rover. So yeah, we came here just to make a quick visit after enjoying the scenery for a few, just for a tiny bit. We are back on our way back towards Cuban, since this is a Mun return mission, more or less, to prove the capabilities of this craft. And thanks to the the nuclear engine would be more than enough to take off on its own, but we still have some oxidizer left, so there we could use a bit our Rapier engines to get a bit more height and bit more clearance to get off the kind of over this cliff without any issues. And here I decided to unlock one of the two Oscar B fuel tanks in the nose cone. They're hidden in there in order to, you know, be able to have some backup fuel. That's literally to have some backup fuel if you're landing on a planet or a body with stronger gravity than the nuclear engine could kind of deal with on its own, and that's why we have some backup fuel, or if we're stuck in orbit so that we can deorbit using said fuel. But anyways, in the end we didn't really need it, but still it was a good thing to use, that thing, that fuel up. Now, after going into orbit, which is a rather easy task since there's no atmosphere, there's nothing that's hindering us from going into accelerating up to orbital velocities at such low altitudes, and then we just skip more or less one orbit, time warp to the periapsis, and perform our escape burn, which is our return burn as well. And because of our, even though not too big inclination at the Mun, we are leaving, or at least entering, the sphere of influence. No, not sphere of influence, we're still in the sphere of influence, aren't we? No, I mean, our trajectory, our return trajectory, let's call it this way, is very inclined, so extreme inclination there, 40, 50, 60-ish degrees. And yeah, that's not the best idea to, you know, not the perfect return trajectory to land at the KSC, isn't it? So I decided, okay, I'm going to get ahead of myself, let's just stick with this for a second. So we're going to use obviously aero capturing here, well, aero braking, not capture, since we are still capture, or still in the sphere of, not leaving the sphere of influence of Kerbin. But we need, or we use now the atmosphere of Kerbin, even though we in theory have more than enough fuel to slow ourselves down with the engine, chemical propulsion probably, yeah, still chemical propulsion, and to deorbit ourselves. But you know, using the atmosphere is a lot more, you know, economic and way more realistic, one could say. Okay, now skipping ahead a few aero brakes, you can see now that I enabled the showcase, like on the map screen you can toggle on and off different types of crafts and vehicles, and I enabled the launch pads, and now you could see there up in the north where our orbit crosses is the Boomerang launch site, and I decided, instead of waiting now a few, like 3-4 orbits or so until the KSC would cross our orbital path, I decided to go, let's go and land on the Boomerang launch site. I haven't been at the Boomerang launch site for I don't know how many months, if not a year, since the only thing I remember launching from the Boomerang launch site is my Soyuz mission, which was a live stream if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's quite a long while ago. And let's use this opportunity and have a rather closer inspection from the of the Boomerang launch site, and at the same time we are in theory, well, not even in theory, but we are actually landing still at one of our Kerbal Space Program facilities, not the KSC itself, but one of its facilities. So one could count this as a return mission to the KSC, right? So I'd say yes. And now we are already rapidly approaching the Boomerang launch site here, next to the mountains here. Actually a rather beautiful approach vector we have, and it's not in Kerbal Space Program, you're rarely kind of on these inclined orbits, even though that would be compared to real life the most, you know, realistic ones, since we don't have any kind of launch complex literally on the equator, and yeah, so that's kind of a thing there. And most of the spacecrafts are launched from slightly higher latitudes, even though not quite this high up. as the boomerang launch site is, since this is probably around the 40 to 50 is parallel or something like that. No, probably even further north than that. But anyways, you can see the boomerang launch site there in front of us, and we are coming down for landing, slowing down, flaring a bit, and then there's gentle touchdown. And by the way, in the top right corner you can see the moon, but then kind of it started wobbling around, which was rather unpleasant. So let's try again. And now this is literally the second attempt, so there's no other attempts in between. It was just a second attempt here, touching down, carefully braking, and then everything is under control, and we are at 30 meters per second, which is a decent speed for taxiing. And let's reactivate our engines again so that we can approach or get closer to the actual launch complex. And now, by the way, there's the moon up in the top right side. So we came literally from the moon down here. So you can just imagine a straight line. That's perfect. That's very good. Okay, I was a little bit surprised that the boomerang launch site does not have a runway, but we were still able to land on this more or less slightly, can deal with this kind of flat surface or something. And yeah, and with parking right next to the launch site, we have completed today's mission. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this SSTO showcase, and generally all SSTO videos I've done so far. Yeah, so thanks very much for watching, and until next time, Spaceship signing out.